we go. So, welcome everybody. I've been looking forward to this date for a long time. I'm just going to slightly alter that camera slightly up. Excuse the teething problems, folks. We'll get there. I've been looking forward to this date, like I was saying, for a long time. When I first spoke to this man here, I was blown away by him, his story and everything. So, welcome, Mr. Brian May. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you.
And thank you for having us. It's
most welcome.
It's a definite privilege. Genuinely, I don't get excited about meeting too many people, but I do this man. So, what we're doing today is I said to Johnny, who's here in the background, I said to Johnny at work, I'm like, we have got to document this man's knowledge. We have to. Because it hasn't been done for a while. And as part of that, I want him to tell everybody, we've got him on a good day. We've got you on a good day today, haven't we,
Yes,
Brian?
yes.
If we'd have got you yesterday, this wouldn't have happened, would it?
No.
So we're doing well. But I want to, if you just turn the button, you're all right. So if anybody is wanting to ask questions live on Facebook, we're broadcasting live on Facebook as well, in addition to filming the whole thing here as well. And I've got other questions from people as well. So we're just going to free flow it. We're just going to go with it. But one of the initial things I wanted people to hear is Brian's initial story about how you studied eyes, it wasn't initially pigeons, was it?
No.
It was the start. Pigeons just one part of it that you came into. So explain.
Happened. I've always been interested in livestock. I've always had horses since I was 7, and all other types of livestock. And I became the secretary to the South Yorkshire Cage Bird Society at the age of 16, and I showed canaries, British birds, foreign birds, and so my life has always been around animals and birds. I've been very, very, very fortunate that I've always been able to continue with my hobbies, and I went in as national service into the army, and one of my friends was an optician, and so I used to sit in with him looking at patients' eyes, and I got intrigued in the different patterns. When I came out of the army, I came involved with Northern General Hospital and Fir Vale, which was then a workhouse. I was a technician in the occupational therapy department, and so I was able to see loads and loads and loads of eyes. In the Fir Vale side of the hospital, we had 2,000 patients, and so I saw different types and all sorts of people that had been referred back because, shall we say, today they would be autistic. In those days, they were mentally retarded. And so quite a lot were transigent, and they moved in and out of the hospital as the condition went. One of these patients that came in really fascinated me because when you looked at him and looked at his eyes, they were the most fantastic patterned eyes I've ever seen. And we could never understand why he came in as a tramp. He was always brought back by the police as a tramp. When we found out his background, he was far from a tramp. He owned one of the biggest steelworks in Sheffield. His IQ was untestable. He had been educated at Eton, and his eye patterns were fantastic. But like many other things, he just did not fit in with the rest of the world. And he wanted to mooch around and do the things he wanted to do. His family had more or less disowned him.
Right.
Because he mooched.
Yeah. He didn't fit in.
And he didn't fit in. But he was so intelligent, it was unbelievable. And I was fascinated by the patterns of his eyes. And then I started looking at all the other patients' eyes. And I got permission to look at the eyes of so many. And we had a lot of psychopaths. We had a locked ward. And I saw quite a lot of people who had been very, very violent, and looked at their eyes, and I saw the different patterns evolving from different areas. So that was very, very interesting. And I then decided to go into mental health. And I went to Durham University to take a degree, and I was able there to concentrate on children's eyes. And I did a thesis on eye patterns in children.
Right.
And that again was very, very interesting, because I was able to look at school children right through to university graduates and see how the patterns evolved. And like everything else, it doesn't matter whether the pattern is very, very good or very, very low. If the person hasn't the drive and the determination to do the job or the thing that he loves to do, he never will do it. And that, I came into pigeons because a very, very good fancier who had a shop near to my parents' shop, used to bring pigeons for me to look at. And I started looking at their eyes and picking out the ones that I felt were the ones that would do some damage. And he certainly did the damage. And I chauffeured him to a pigeon show, the South Yorkshire Gold Medal winners. And he'd been talking to some of the other pigeon men, and the secretary of the show, after it had been judged, said, "Oh, have a look at these eyes of these pigeons." And the tickets hadn't been put on, and so I looked at the eyes and I put them in what I thought was the right rota. And when the judges came and they put the cards on, I'd only got 2 wrong, and they were the 7th and 8th. I'd put 8th and 7th, and the 10th and 9th, and they were just
The other way around.
the other way round. And so, of course, they wanted to know. Unfortunately for me, there was a reporter from the local paper in the room, and he ran on the weekend paper, local doctor. Oh, that created no amount of upset, because I had to go to the hospital and explain myself, and that I hadn't pretended to be a doctor, and I hadn't pretended to be this, that or the other. And then the national papers got hold of it.
Oh, wow.
And then the local Look North got hold of it. And the hospital secretary sent for me and said, I'm fed up of reporters and people ringing up about this silly eye thing you've done. So he said, I've arranged that with Look North for you to go this afternoon and do a programme. Well, to be honest, I nearly died on the spot because I wasn't prepared. I didn't know, and I don't even now profess to be a qualified pigeon man. After, from 1954 onwards, I was inundated with pigeons. So I went, and one of the top fanciers was J.L. Roberts,
Right.
from Marple, and he was one of the top Delbar specialists in Great Britain, and he'd brought a pannier of pigeons for me to look at on television. I died 1,000 deaths going into that studio, and anyhow, he said, I want you to put the ones with good eyesight in this basket, the ones with poor eyesight in that basket. So I did do, and I did it a bit too fast for them. And F.S. Hall, who was interviewing, said, oh, well, what else can he do? And J.L. Roberts says, pick me the best of the ones that you've put in the best basket. So I did, and it was a little red hen. And she'd won every award that could be won except one. And he said, no, you haven't picked the best. He said, number 8 cock is the best. He's won one more prize than she has. So I said, but I said, this hen is going to beat number 8 cock this coming year. And lo and behold, it did. And he rang me up and said, you know what you're talking about. I don't think I did. I was too terrified. And I got home. I got home and then went to work on the Monday. And when I got back from the hospital, there were 6 baskets had been delivered by British Rail, full of pigeons, with a note, please grade each of these and we'll send you a donation to the hospital. So I did do, and kept on for nearly a fortnight, people sending baskets of pigeons, and I was absolutely mortified because I didn't class myself as a pigeon man. And
You were an eye man.
I was an eye man, and I liked it. I enjoyed doing it, but I didn't think anything of it, other than that I was picking the best patterned eyes. And then, the number of invitations to the local clubs flooded in, and I could have been out every night of the week doing shows. Invariably, I did so many. I was handling over 1,000 pigeons a week.
Wow.
And I made sure that I wasn't influenced by the condition or the age of the pigeon. So always someone else handled the pigeon because I wasn't that good at handling pigeons. So someone else handled them, held them, and I looked at them. And eventually I was invited to judge all the big shows, and I went all over Great Britain judging, and it was wonderful because I met a lot of wonderful people. But eyes are only part of a vast machine, and the machine is the bird. I've never seen an eyeball fly on its own.
Well, this is what we talked about when we first spoke, that there's a lot of eye people that only think the eye is the thing, which logically cannot be.
No.
I mean,
no.
Like you say, no eyeball flies over the channel.
No.
At the end of the day, my take on this with coming into Eyesign was knowing logically it has to just be part of it. If you've got an equally good bird that hasn't got a great eye, however you determine that eye not to be great, compared to one that has, you're going to go with the one that has. So it's an element of the whole makeup of the bird.
Absolutely. And this showed itself when I started looking at children's eyes, because some kids had fantastic eyes and just didn't want to do anything, were just a nuisance at times. And you get birds with very, very good eyes that can hardly fly from the housetop back to the loft because they haven't got what it takes.
Now, would you say they haven't got what it takes? Is that genetics of the breeding and maybe the different birds their parents and their grandparents have been bred with, or what part of is it nature and what part is not nurture?
Well, this after Eyesign came popular, everyone jumped on the bandwagon and wanted to breed a very good eye as to, shall we say, a working eye.
Mm-hmm.
And today you've only to look at the winners, in which most the homing world prints of the eyes of the winners, and you can see a lot of them are shall we say mediocre eyes, but they're brilliant.
Explain what you mean by that a bit more.
Right, the bright and the full of energy.
Right. Okay.
Whereas a lot are shall we say dead eyes that just look as though they've come off a cushion.
Right.
And they haven't done. And this is where the old adage that the old pigeon men used to say, the basket is the pedigree. To many people now are breeding off a name. And like so many things, I wouldn't dare say that I was a specialist. I'm an enthusiast. But so many people have become specialists in this, that and the other, and especially in a lot of the hospital regimes, because they read a book written by somebody who read a book.
Yeah.
And they picked the bits and bobs out of it to make it work. And so I've only ever wanted to, shall we say, look at an eye and evaluate what the thing was. Now, at Doncaster show about 4 years ago, I was walking round and I was tapped on the shoulder, and a chap from Wales came to see me and said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "I'm sorry, but I see hundreds and hundreds of people every week." He said, I've forgotten.
Sure.
Yes,
Sure.
Show in Wales.
It was
Doncaster show.
Tredegar show,
Right.
and the Ironsides club. And whilst they'd put all the birds in, and a young lad came in, he'd be about 10, and he ran down the aisles and pushed all the cages off the tables, and all the birds escaped, and it was pandemonium. Anyhow, they got them all in, and he was caught by his father to come and apologise. And I said, "I'll have a look in your eyes." And I sat him down and I looked at his eyes, and I said to his father, "He'll manage to do anything he wants, providing it's what he wants to do." And he said, I don't repeat what his father said he could do, but at Doncaster show, this chap said, "Now," he said, "do you remember?" I said, "Yes." I said, "There was a little lad with bright red hair, and he tipped all the birds off the tables." He said, "Yes, he sends you his best wishes. He's just taken the chair of research at Harwell Atomic."
Wow. So you were right. You see, you said about you don't class yourself as an expert, but you are regarded as there's nobody else I know that's so highly regarded as you. So not you're up there.
Well, I've no axe to grind.
Well, that's the other thing that came over when I first spoke to you. You've not got an agenda and any.
No, I've never thought that it's got to be that and that only, because there's variations on everything. With the horses there were two mares, and they were totally different. And that one, you couldn't stop doing anything. When we went hunting, she'd want to jump. She wanted to join the hounds. We did a trail. I was secretary to the Fitzwilliam trail hunt, so we used to hunt a person with bloodhounds. But she wanted to join the hounds.
Oh, wow.
She couldn't be stopped. It was a nightmare to ride her. That one, she'd go, she'd do everything you wanted and be quite happy at it. She had to be in charge.
Right.
And that's the same with pigeons and people.
Pigeons and people.
You always get someone that needs to be number one. And she'd jump and gallop her heart out to be in front.
Right.
And I was once riding her with the Grove and Rufford hunt, and they got sent home because she went in front of Lady Anne Candice Bentinck. And she, I did a big circle, came back, and she'd spotted me, and she rode up to me, and she always rode side saddle. She was, shall we say, one of the old-fashioned ladies, and she pointed to me and said, "Go home, young man." Yeah. And I felt that the earth had swallowed me up. So I wasn't able to go with the Grove and Rufford for a few months. I dared show my face. But that's the same with humans, with pigeons. And then I was invited by the Scottish Siberian Husky Society to look at the dogs that were competing up at Aviemore.
Right.
And so I went and graded the dogs.
Right.
And fortunately for me, it worked out.
So it transcends pretty much any living animal.
Yes. Yes. And no matter what you look at, shall we say, chickens have the same sort of patterns. Obviously, they've been bred for laying.
Yeah.
But you look at some of the, shall we say, jundle fowl, and they have a different eye totally. It's more direct, it's more intense, and it works out well.
Right.
Horses are the same.
So any living thing
as patterns
that you can read the eye of as a pattern.
You can see the eye patterns.
Right.
And it's nice to see some were very, very difficult, and the ones that are going to succeed look back at you.
Right.
The ones that are easygoing, you can, shall we say, rest in their eye. Right. They're nice, and it's the same with people, and same with I had a placement at Barlinnie Prison.
Right.
And I was able to look at a lot of inmates. And the ones that I'd done, shall we say, the worst crimes, a lot of them had marvellous eyes, but when you looked at them, you felt cold.
So that's that nature nurture thing, isn't it?
Yes.
If they'd have been born into a different area or family or
oh, no, not really, no, because we had one of our clients had a brother, and he murdered his grandfather for 79 pence.
Wow.
And he had been brought up, and I'd known that person for nearly, 15, 16 years. And he'd never shown any nastiness or anything. But that one day, he snapped. And his eyes were very cold.
So it's probably down to the same thing as we were talking about pigeons then. It's what the eye is, of course, logically one element of a person.
Yes.
And there's different factors that cater into that. I've got some questions for you, Brian, I want to ask.
Yes.
Do the colour of eyes matter?
No.
There you go. Simple.
All pigeons, all birds evolved from the pterodactyl era, and all reptiles have the base tissue of the same eye, which is a pearl eye.
Right. So colour doesn't matter at
No.
all, because it's all originating from the same. These questions are in no particular order, Brian, so just forgive me if they're don't quite make sense in turn. But a breeding eye, as such,
Yes.
we're talking pigeons now, obviously. I think I know the answer to this. Somebody's asked, will a breeding eye win races?
Oh yes, yes.
And that's based on what we were talking about earlier, that it's one element of it, isn't it? Because
There was a red hen in Derbyshire. I'm sorry, I can't remember his
that's
name.
fine.
And she'd won Paul. She'd won also many other races, and she had the most marvellous breeding eye that you could imagine.
She was good at both then.
She
really.
was good at both.
Right.
And Mr. Llewellyn down at Dover, he has a number of fantastic eyed pigeons who have done very, very well for other people.
Right. We'll talk about Nigel in a few minutes. A couple more questions in. Can you ask Brian if pigeons see in colour as humans do?
Now, that was one of the, shall we say, little job lots that Eddie Newcomb in Scotland asked me to find out for him. And Kodak supplied me with different coloured bulbs so that I was able to colour the food, colour the water and everything like that, and see how much, and weigh out how much they ate and how much they drank over a 7-month period. And that was very, very interesting, because to see, as far as I'm aware, they can see every colour of the colour spectrum that we do, but they see yellow brighter than we do.
Right. Well, that's fascinating in itself. And the extension to that question was, and you've already kind of just answered it, if so, are there any colours that are more distinguishable, i.e. for landing boards and loft colours inside and out? So
again, this was a thing that I did with my own birds, and I painted every colour landing board to see whether or not some are going faster than others, and it didn't make any difference.
no difference.
No.
Okay.
But yellow is one of the best colours.
Do you see that brighter than we do?
Yes.
Isn't that interesting? One question is about how pigeons use topography to home and not the routes that we think they do. What's your thoughts on that, Brian?
Right. I'm sorry with names
It's fine.
because since having Parkinson's, some days I can't remember my own name. But one of the wing commanders at Finningley Air Base kept pigeons, and he sent quite a few pigeons down to one of the other air bases, and they were tagged, and we followed them up on radar to see the way they came.
Oh, wow.
And that again was so interesting. But another thing that came out of that was that pigeons, like yachts, use thermals and wind directions, and so they come down the wind, up the wind, and so move, shall we say, on a line that can be a mile wide.
Wow. So, in effect, they're flying a hell of a lot longer than the point-to-point we think they
Oh,
are.
definitely, definitely. Well, with John's birds, the measurements from point to point was 72 miles, and when it was measured, it was 92 miles.
Wow.
72 miles direct,
Yeah.
but
In real terms.
yes, because they had to
21
go round the hill. They don't go over the top.
Wow.
And so that prompted me to book a 2-hour glider flight. And when people say, it's the wind, oh, the wind was this, the wind was that, please book yourself a glider flight, and it will open a new vista on how pigeons and how different birds get home in different wind conditions.
Well, it's funny because it was on down where I am at. It was talking about gliders yesterday, and they were talking about how ladies in particular are getting into the sport. I think it's classed as, and that thermals, and it makes sense that now when you say that, perhaps you would think, oh, there's a hill or a mountain there, so they've got that to fly over, but in reality, they're going to fly around it.
To fly around it. The thing is that if gliders could only go one way, they'd go from one place to where the wind was blowing them. But they fly into the wind and across the wind and can do all sorts of variations, or otherwise they'd never get back.
No.
But pigeon men have this idea that it's got to be. There's no ifs and buts. If my grandfather said it did double somersaults all the way home, it'd do it. And I've never met a hobby that has so many set features in it. It's got to be this, it's got to be
Why
the
do
other.
you think that is?
It's just because they haven't looked at it.
Why haven't they looked at it though? Because you've got two types of pigeon people when it comes to Eyesign. You've got them that say, oh, and we've already said that ultimately the basket is the ultimate prover. We've already acknowledged that, but they say that in a way that completely dismisses Eyesign. Then you've got the others that completely believe in it, but then some of them take it way too far, and that if the bird's not got a good eye, they won't even try it out for breeding or racing. But the interesting thing to me is that actually you're one of the very few people that does know what he's talking about, that's actually in the middle. That the idea that you're open to, you've said categorically the eye is not everything, it's just one element, which is the logical thing to think. But there seems to be, you either believe in it or you don't.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, 7 out of 10 men are colourblind.
Well, I'm slightly colourblind, yeah. And you, John?
And so what one person sees, another person doesn't see through the same pair of eyes.
Would that affect the features of the eye, though, or just the colour?
Yes, it does.
Right.
It does.
So that's why you got a lot of arguments.
And this is when we've had, shall we say, talk-ins rather than Eyesign shows, and you've asked people to look at different factors. Some have seen it, some can barely make it out, and some can't see it at
So
all.
70% of men are colourblind in some degree.
Yes.
Wow.
And especially on the railways, they had to take a colour test.
Right.
And in the Air Force as well.
Yeah.
And this is why I found so many fighters out when I was in the army, because I went into the army the most spoilt brat that anybody could have been. Nobody had ever said, no, you can't do it. No meant you're going to do it.
Right.
And I was the bane of everybody's life at home because I did it my way or it didn't get done.
Well, that's... has anybody looked at your eyes?
Yes.
And it's pretty accurate. I would assume is it somebody that you taught or you work with, or who looked at your eyes?
A friend, the friend in the army.
Right.
And after we'd been, shall we say, looking at a lot of people's eyes, and I looked and said, oh, it's so-and-so, so-and-so. And he started to look, and then he looked at mine, and he just said, oh. Oh.
Well, you didn't say that to me. Before we started recording, Brian looked at mine and pretty spot on in many ways. I like a challenge. I'm not interested if it's not a challenge. Quite a few different elements of it were, and it was literally maybe a 5-6 second look in my eyes, in both eyes. That was it, wasn't it?
Yes.
And you can do that. So, I mean, that in itself's fascinating. It was quite scary as well, really, because I was a bit nervous about what he'd say about my eyes. But let's have a quick look what else we've got. So on Facebook, we've had quite a few people watching. We've got people watching from the Philippines, all over. Manila. Brian Massey says, you're a legend of a man. Sid Collins over in Ireland says, tell Brian that he's asking about you.
Oh, with his friend who was murdered by the IRA, they did all the slides that, that John's got.
Yeah, I've got those. I've got a copy of those on a DVD. So yeah, Sid says hello. I met Sid when I was over there last month actually. A couple more, just real quick questions if we can.
Yes.
Derek Gibbs says, can Brian explain the serrated pupil effect, not the eye sign itself?
Yes, that is a trait within a family.
Right, so that's a family trait, a line
A
trait.
family trait, yes. A lot of families have traits that are handed down within a family.
Right, okay. Why do pieds have bull eyes?
Because they carry white
Is that as simple as that?
Yes. But if you get a good light and look at the eye face on and then gradually turn the head to the side, it will lift off and you can see all the characteristics that are underneath.
A side view or reveal.
Yes, everything is so easy to do, and it gives you a marvellous indication, and a lot of pies are put down because it's just a fad.
Fascinating, isn't it? What was special about the Gittins hen's eye?
It was alive.
Just the eye was the whole eye was alive.
It lived. It looked at you. It looked back at you and said, "Dare me."
There you go.
But what a thing that, shall we say, that is most important with pigeons is the feathering.
Right.
With any type of bird, it doesn't matter what species you've got. You've got two types of feather. If you want to say one is waterproof, like an umbrella skin, or the other is like a tweed coat. And if you put them under a microscope, you can see this happening. Strange. There's a big feather somewhere.
Is that separate?
Oh, yes. But, here we are. He's looking at me.
Oh, there you go.
You can see, I contacted every zoo in Europe and I got samples of every type of bird, and they fell into two categories: buff and yellow. Yellow repels moisture, buff absorbs it. So on a dry, shall we say, windy day, a buff feather will come over a yellow feather,
Right.
because a yellow feather is finer, but when it's damp, the yellow feather, and if we call thinking, I really should say a silk feather rather than yellow, because people take your word and think it's a yellow colour.
Mm-hmm.
But
Silky base feather, yeah.
when I was in Germany, I was stationed in Germany for 2 years, and I met a chap who kept Harts Mountain rollers, singing canaries, and I was fascinated with these. And after I come out of their forces, I went back across to see him. And he also kept racing pigeons. So he showed me the racing pigeons. I hadn't got racing pigeons then. And he also brought in the evening a little box about 15 inches square with two lids, and he opened it, and these tiny little parlour tumblers flew up to the ceiling and tumbled down. And I thought, how do they do it? So he made a film for me, and when it was in slow motion, the leading edge of the feather. They were all buff feathered pigeons, and the leading edge turned up like a wind flap, and they were able to do it. And if you breed too many times buff feathered pigeons together, the quill becomes almost central.
Right.
And so it slows the bird down.
Right.
And then you get a bird that is always at the back. But when I went to Catrice's loft, I went to Catrice's loft and we're looking at the pairs, and I pointed that. And Boselink, if you just get that big card, no.
This one here?
Yes. Boselink
Okay.
said, "What are you looking at?" I said, "I'm just admiring the fact that you've paired a yellow feather to a buff feather." And he said, and he took me upstairs into the, shall we say, Lord of Lords, and we had a look, and he said, "You can come again."
This was 1968.
Yes.
Wow.
So
that's amazing. The one other question that came in while we were talking, and we kind of covered colour already, but is it really important to mix different coloured eyes for racing, or is it okay to pair the same coloured eyes together? I mean, based on the idea that colour doesn't matter, is that an easy question to answer already?
I found that in the big lofts like Catrice and Pursuons and quite a lot of the lofts, they like to mix the eyes, because one, if you pair violet eyes or pearl eyes together for a long time, you get a fish eye.
Right. Yeah.
And fish eyes aren't attractive to many people.
No.
And so you increase the colour combinations.
Okay. Thank you for that. Two more questions. Well, one more general, and then I've got a question here first. What do you think the best eye on a pigeon you've ever seen, and whose was it? Now, that's probably a question you can't answer, is it?
No, because I've seen so many great champions. I've handled some fantastic champions. But one of the finest eyes I've ever seen was Eddie Newcomb's trellis.
Right.
And in Ireland, I would say, has the majority of very, very, very good eyes. One, because the eye patterns in people, the stronger the eye patterns are in people, the more intelligence they have. And you need intelligence to fly from France.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so therefore they have a double channel to fly. And so the quality of the Irish eyes are unbelievable. And when you see them on the video, they are tremendous. And so I would say that.
Okay, thank you. And we mentioned before cameras were rolling, you mentioned Nigel Llewellyn.
Yes.
You highly rate him and his DVD, don't you?
Yes, I do. I have a friend who goes to see Nigel quite often, and he's brought the Van der Esp pigeons up all the time, and he has a lovely family of them. Unfortunately, he loves pigeons, my friend, rather than raises them.
All right. He's a collector, a hoarder.
But so many people have had Nigel's pigeons and won with them.
Well, that's the sign of a guy that knows what he's talking
Yes.
about.
All over Great Britain they've had them and they've won with them. And I've judged at shows where they've cropped up, and my God, do they stand out. But that again comes back. There's another card just there.
Which one?
A little card.
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
Bill Poplar. And he, in the war, Vandenboos's daughter was based in the big park across the road,
Right.
just like Bletchley.
Okay.
And she was, I've forgotten the name, lodged with Bill Poplar.
Right.
And Bill Poplar was one of the top pigeon men in South Yorkshire. And after the war, he went over for holidays, and they treated him like a king.
Yeah.
And he brought back some of the finest Belgian birds out, which were Van der Esp at that time.
Right.
And he was the president of the Yorkshire Plumbers Association, and he was a big friend of my father's. And everybody, he always used to say, send your kid down and I'll send him up with some proper pigeons.
Oh, wow.
And I would never go because everyone used to say, the father buys the everything. And he didn't.
No.
And so when I ended up with a lot of Bill's birds when he died at the final sale.
Wow.
And they were the Paul Vandenboos pigeons, and they were Van der Esp. And I've still got them now from 1947.
Wow. Wow.
And they're still winning. John and Top Lofts and Terry Lodge is resurrecting them, and I've lent him quite a few of these pigeons because they're absolutely wonderful bodied, fantastic feather.
Wow.
And like with feather, sorry,
Right.
there we are. Oh, no problem. It's that one. With feather, it's been a fascination, and that's 1966.
Wow.
The experiments I did, and I numbered every feather on 10 birds
Show the camera.
and kept them separate.
Wow.
And every time they dropped, and you can see when they were hatched, and that was the first time I did light system, and there was 47 days difference
Wow.
in molting.
Wow. You're an early pioneer.
But I got samples of feathers from all over the world of every description of every bird, and I had a spare room at my parents' house, and they were all listed and left on the carpet because I did my experiments there. And one of the cleaners came and soaked them up
Oh,
with
dear.
the thing, and I lost about 10 years of
Oh, my
experiments.
Wow.
But
How horrible.
this is
That's-
why I'm
Say that
fascinated.
again. That's on the
I'm
feathers.
fascinated with feather, because without feathers they can't fly, and without feathers they'll know whether they've got 2 eyes, 4 eyes, or any eyes. They'll not perform.
So, one last question that's just snuck in, which I'm only asking because there's a correlation with.
Yes.
We were talking about the Irish birds. Do distance birds? This man says has better eyes, but I would say stronger eyes than sprinters. Is there a correlation between a longer distance bird having a stronger eye?
Yes, the longer distance birds seem to have a bigger build-up of the iris,
Right.
and that comes with the knowledge that they've gained.
Got you. Okay. Thank you. Right. So just so you know, what we're going to do is we're recording this, and together with some of the slides that Brian's done via Johnny, who's here as well, we're going to kind of mix them up, and we're going to do a bit of a more in-depth thing, some of the things we've been talking about as well. But in the meantime, we're an hour in now, so I think it's been amazing. And Brian, thank you for having me. And
Oh, you're most welcome.
You've been greatly received, as I knew you would be. And thank you for taking the time. And it's funny, isn't it? Like every time you speak to Brian, you learn more and more. And there's not many people in the world you can say that about. Yeah.
Well,
Thank you, Brian.
I'm sorry I've stuttered and
No, you've been amazing.
muttered,
You've been amazing.
but today's been a good day for me.
It's been a good day for us all. So thank you for watching, folks. Thank you again to Brian, and watch out for some of the other information that we've got via Johnny McWhirter, and we're going to put together a bit more of info on some of the eyes that I've been sent from Johnny via Brian. We're going to put that out later on. You've got a great feedback coming in on Facebook Live. Buzz Nichols says respect to you, Brian. Fascinating interview. What a clever man. And thank you for watching, folks. So we'll call it a day at that, and I will be putting this out again with some of the eyes and the pictures and all the other information we've got down the line. Thank you for watching, and catch you soon.
Thank you very much.